Channel 2S is brought to you by New Type HQ. Get your kits and supplies at the link in the description below. Hello and welcome to Channel 2S. I'm your host, Second Soundwave, and it has been quite a while since we last did Gunpla news. Last time we were here, I thought we were looking at kind of a little bit of a preview, a little bit of a prelude to the Shizuoka Hobby Show, and it turned out that that was actually all we were getting at the Shizuoka Hobby Show. Apparently the event opens up a few days ahead of time for the press, and I didn't realize that. I thought this was just a few things they were leaking ahead of the convention, but it turns out what I thought was the actual starting date for the event was just when it started opening to the public, so there was literally nothing else to show. What you saw in that episode of Gunpla News is all we saw at Shizuoka 2022. And as far as just like regular normal Gunpla News goes, there has been basically nothing to talk about for the last month, so I haven't popped in again until now, when we finally have a lot of information coming out about Witch from Mercury. Now, we still don't know every single thing about this show yet, although we do have a preview for it coming in just a little bit. I'll get to that later. We do now know a lot more about this show than we did just a few weeks ago. So today we're going to be going through the Witch from Mercury website, looking at all the new information that's been added and talking about some of the cool new stuff they're showing off. So right off the bat, we have both a synopsis for the series and a reveal for the timeline abbreviation. This story will be taking place in the Ad Stella timeline, AS. Now, I find timeline abbreviations to be pretty much irrelevant for basically anything that's not Cosmic Era or Universal Century, because 99% of the time when Bandai and Sunrise make a new timeline for a Gundam series, that series is pretty much the only thing that exists within that timeline outside of maybe a couple of OVAs or manga spin-offs, but it's still a cool little tidbit regardless. This story does appear to start in the 122nd year of this timeline, so if they're basing this off a lot of the other Gundam timelines where year 0 or year 1 of the timeline is kind of where a lot of the really sci-fi stuff starts and humanity starts to go off into space and make space colonies, then it seems like the general world that this takes place in is pretty well established by the time that the story begins. And as we can see from the synopsis, it seems like the story will revolve around, or at very least begin, with our main character, Suletta Mercury, going to some sort of like elite academy for technology where she'll be mingling with the sons and daughters and relatives and descendants of the people that own the corporations that control, well, from the way this synopsis seems to be going, basically the entire world. It's a pretty interesting setup that's not too much like anything else we've gotten in Gundam before, so I'm very interested in seeing where they go with this. Here we can see a pretty comprehensive staff list here showing off some of the people that are going to be working on this project. If you see any names you recognize here, let me know in the comments, because most of these names are completely foreign to me and they're not people that I've ever heard of before, and I'm not familiar with anything they've worked on in the past. So if there's anyone here that's worked on something really cool or really bad, go ahead and let me know in the comments. Only name here that really jumps out to me is Ippei Gyobu, who was of course the mechanical designer for Iron-Blooded Orphans and G-Reco, and once we get into the mechanical designs for this series, there's one or two mobile suits here that are very obviously designed by him. Alright, and now we come to the characters. So Suletta Mercury is our protagonist, she is female, she is the Gundam pilot. We did see just a tiny little bit of her in the teaser, however here we can see her full head-to-toe, front and back character design. She is a second-year student in the piloting department, transferred to the school from Mercury. She's timid and somewhat lacks communication skills. It seems like they're kind of going the Mikazuki route where she's like a very quiet, reserved character. Suletta Mercury will be piloting the Gundam Ariel, and I feel like I don't really need to say that because we've known that since pretty much day one. Okay, so Suletta we already saw before, but now we're getting into the actual new characters. So this is Miorine Rembrandt. She is another student at the school. She is the only one of these characters we'll be looking at today who does not pilot a mobile suit, or at least does not have a mobile suit connected to their character page here. The fact that she doesn't have a mobile suit of her own makes me suspect that she is probably going to be like the best friend of the main character, and even though she doesn't have her own mobile suit, she'll still probably be tagging along on whatever adventures Suletta gets up to. As for the rest of the students, they each have their own mobile suit. Guel pilots a custom Delanza, which is the mobile suit that I was referring to that is very obviously designed by Ippei. This thing looks like it walked straight out of G-Reco. He's an ace pilot with a rough temperament and is quick to anger. He has absolute confidence in his own skills. He is the heir to Jeturk Heavy Machinery, one of the group's 3 branches. So that seems to be kind of a reoccurring theme with these characters, is that everyone except for Suletta is either the son or daughter of the CEO or chairman of one of these massive companies that basically owns the known world and humanity pretty much. Very dystopian cyberpunk sounding. Then we have Alan Ceres. He is another pilot, another sort of emotionally introverted character as it would seem based off his character description, and he has an interest in Stuleta. Now his Gundam, the Gundam Farak, is another newly revealed design that we hadn't seen anything of before, and I am getting major Gaia Gear vibes from this design. I think what a lot of it comes down to is how broad the upper body is, with these giant engines on his shoulders and the wing pieces kind of coming down off the sides. It's not a design language that is exclusive to Gaia Gear, but for some reason that's the first thing that comes to mind when I see this mecha. It does appear like the back of the legs can somehow fold down and extend to create either claws or some sort of extensions to his legs. And this is definitely a mobile suit designed for long-range combat with its extended sniper rifle. Then we have Shadiq Zeleny looking like an absolute hippie. He is the adopted child of the CEO of Grassley Defense Systems, and he pilots the Michaelis, which is a very knightly looking mobile suit. This is another mobile suit that looks very G-Reco and IBO inspired. Ippei definitely had a hand in designing this. And speaking of hands, one of the hands on this mobile suit is completely encrusted in these odd shield pieces. Now there's clearly some sort of gimmick involved in these. At the very least, they can articulate and move around. However, I do also have to wonder if these can perhaps detach from the arm and operate similar to Cheridim's shield bits. On one hand, it would be kind of odd for a mobile suit this unassuming looking to have that kind of advanced, like, new type style technology, but on the other, it would be really weird if these are just kind of stuck to the arm and don't do anything. As for the rest of the design, it is a very knightly looking mobile suit, but it's also a very clean, very simple design. In fact, it reminds me a lot of, was it the G Bouncer or the G Axes? That whole line of G mobile suits from Gundam Age, the really stark white kind of knightly looking mobile suits that Wolf guy used. The Michaelis really does remind me more of that than anything else. In fact, it almost feels like it could be a commander variant of some grunt that we haven't seen yet. Now, that's all the characters that they've shown off in the site before, and you'll notice that while they did introduce quite a few new mobile suits, there are still 2 mobile suits that were announced before that we do not have pilots for yet. So we don't actually know who's going to be piloting the Lefrith, and we don't know who's going to be piloting the BB. With what I was speculating about earlier regarding the character relations, Miorine did really seem to be kind of like a best friend type character for Stuleta, and she didn't have a mobile suit shown off on her character page, so maybe this is something that she ends up piloting later on. This does have that kind of secondary character Gundam sort of feel to it. And then the Burger, the BB, I'm just going to call it BB from now on because I don't want to have to pronounce this thing's name anymore. This is clearly some sort of antagonist mobile suit. It could very well be piloted by some sort of Char type character, so we'll have to see how that goes. I do hope that we see a fair amount of it, because one thing that did kind of annoy me about both IBO and G-Reco was that a lot of the antagonist mobile suits really only showed up for a few episodes before they were immediately replaced by something else, which meant that none of them really had a lot of time to shine. Realistically speaking, though, that's not something I'm really expecting to change with Witch from Mercury. So Witch from Mercury proper will begin airing in October. However, there will be a preview prologue being screened in Japan on July 14th. Now, there's been no word yet of how this is going to be distributed internationally. They're showing it at this event in July. However, there is probably going to be some sort of thing up on Gundam Info, maybe like a week or 2 afterwards, so the rest of us can enjoy it too. And unless we get some surprise kit announcements based off the mobile suits that were revealed today, that's probably all the information we're going to have from Witch from Mercury until then, seeing as we're only about a month out from the prologue. I'm looking forward to when we actually get to see the prologue, because I don't really want to make too much of a judgment about this show until then. It looks interesting, it's got some potential, but it could go either way at this point. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to my patrons, including my first and currently only Master Grade patron, Yank. If you want to support the channel while also getting access to perks like early access to non-Gunpla news videos as well as live stream VODs, there is a link down in the description below. You obviously don't have to do it, but it really does help out. And even if you can't support me on Patreon, just leaving a like on the video, subscribing, really does help the YouTube algorithm. Oh, and before I forget, the streams are coming back very soon. I've got a Lotus Stray sitting on the top of my backlog staring at me right now. I'm going to be getting to building that thing as soon as I can, and I have a couple other kits that I want to follow it up with as well. And also I am still editing down the G-Unit streams, and I am going to make those their own separate video coming up here on the channel for everyone to see. In the meantime, as always, the full VODs are up on Patreon. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Second Soundwave, and I'll see you next time. Take care, guys. Man, I need to do these videos more often so I don't completely forget my outro each time.